What is up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, and this is the Wolf of Wall Street's podcast. Today's guest is the founder and chief design officer of Bitso, the most popular Latin American crypto exchange with over 1 million active users using it to buy, sell, send, and receive crypto. While the big news in the United States is that institutions, corporations, and hedge funds are jumping into the crypto space, Pablo believes that a much more significant trend is driving price and adoption, something which I can't wait to find much more about. Pablo Gonzalez, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Scott, thank you very much. And it's pleasure, real pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you. So before we get into the questions, once again, this is the Wolf of Wall Street's podcast, where twice a week I talk to your favorite personalities from the worlds of Bitcoin, finance, trading, art, music, sports, politics, basically anyone with a good story to tell. This show is powered by Blockworks Group, a media company with over 20 podcasts in their network. You can check them out at blockworksgroup.io. And if you like this podcast, you follow me on Twitter, then please check out my website and join my newsletter. You can do both of those things at thewolfofwallstreets.io. So I want to dive right into this. As I said in the intro, the big news here in the United States is institutional adoption and investment. Companies like PayPal coming into the space, all these things we've been hearing about. But you're seeing a much more promising and important trend in Latin America. Can you talk about that?
Definitely, Scott. It's pretty interesting because, I mean, we've been in crypto, my co-founder Ben and I, for a while, and we've always seen this as an amazing world-changing movement, right? And I remember when we were starting, before we were starting Bitso, we were both living in Canada, and always the real, me being Mexican and living abroad for a while, I always thought, developing countries could use this a lot more. Like, I'm in Canada, and there's like most people are banked, there's an ATM here, there's where Bitcoin today, for example, has a very clear use case as millennials bank account,
right.
Like a savings account almost. And now it's the digital gold value proposition. It seems to be becoming a lot more truer now that all the institutions are coming and things like that. But always, when you look at a place like, let's say Mexico, for example, 6 out of 10 Mexicans don't have bank accounts, right?
They're crazy.
Completely underserved by the financial system. And they have needs. They have financial needs, such as receiving payments from abroad, making payments, like with COVID. And I think workforce is getting a lot more globalized. They also have needs to make payments to other places. We're operating in Latin America, and there's countries that have weak currencies as well. Like we're in Argentina, and there's the Argentine peso, which loses half of its value per year, right? And we can go more about a little bit more in detail about this. And there's hundreds of thousands of families millions of families across Latin America that depend on things like remittances. So when you think about what can something like crypto can do for as this world changing movement, to me it's clear that the perfect place for this to happen, it's in developing countries, right, where you have this bigger area of opportunity. It's like when people didn't have landlines or didn't have, and they just went from no communication to having a smartphone and messaging with things from using
right.
data.
So I want to dig in deeper. So clearly there's a couple things, in the United States, we all have the luxury of basically everybody has some sort of bank account. They're not necessarily ideal, but so the first issue you touched on is underbanked or unbanked completely. 6 out of 10 in Mexico, and Mexico is one of the more developed countries in Latin America, correct? So, I mean, it's got to be worse in Venezuela or somewhere that really has these problems. So we have the underbanked issue, which you can talk about more, and then also the hyperinflation issue where currency is basically being devalued so rapidly that the only way to store any value is in crypto and to transact, correct? So can you first talk about the problem of banking the underbanked?
Correct. So when you think about I mean, yeah, Mexico's a developed country, like
Right.
a more developed country. And it's not a developed country yet, but still it has a pretty low level of financial inclusion. The people that are unbanked or underbanked, it's huge, right? And well, like for example, in Venezuela, a lot of people have bank accounts, interestingly enough.
Interesting.
We're not operating in Venezuela yet, but it's pretty interesting because, from like they had a culture of being banked for a while. And now that the Bolivar is completely destroyed, they have a pretty efficient local Bitcoins market because they're using it with these banking transactions because everyone's banked, right? Well, not everyone, but there's a pretty big percentage. Mm-hmm. You see Brazil, where it has a high percentage of banking, but it's horrible banking in Brazil. There's a massive oligopoly where 5 banks control most of the market, especially one. They're the most profitable. Like the banks were like the jurisdiction where the banks are most profitable. It's in Brazil.
Right.
Can banks like Santander, who are in the UK or in Spain, and pretty big economies. Brazil is pretty much a cash cow, right?
Right. And so corrupt banks are making a ton of money in the ways that banks do.
Correct. Like if you want to like get a loan or something like that, you end up paying 300 and something.
Right. Predatory loans, not passing on. Right. Of course.
Correct. Nothing like what we see in the US or, in Japan. It's a very different system. Like it's not necessarily working for the people. And going back to the unbanked, we have over 1 million customers, as you mentioned, and a lot of our customers, their first bank account, it's a Bitcoin account, it's a crypto account. So they're going from like zero to super powered money, right? And one of the things we've done, basically, we have 3 products, Scott. One, it's easy access to crypto with a big focus in payments to enable all these individuals that want to use us to transact. And then another one, it's our exchange, which is called Bitso Alpha, basically like order book exchange. And then we have a cross-border product that we're working more on the enterprise side. And I can talk about that in a second. But on the on one of our products with the unbanked population, it's very easy to use. And we focus a lot on things that are local, like being able to go to a store and getting cash in. So you go from cash to crypto. And basically there's these convenience stores, Oxxo, they're everywhere in Mexico. So basically you can walk, like within walking distance, you can get access to crypto.
Right. Like seeing a Starbucks in the United States. That's how Starbucks is here, right? 15 Starbucks on every block in New York. Yeah.
Correct. And it's interesting because once we see them like digitizing their money in a better way, and they tend to stay in a digital environment where they can transact everywhere, right? Whether it's with Bitcoin or stable coins or even with Mexican pesos. So we've done a lot of things, like just going back to what you were saying. Because of what we're trying to do, our mission is to make crypto useful and we believe that this will massify, right, eventually. So we're seeing a lot of like the unbanked early adopters. And more this is starting to permeate to their friends and family and things like that. So it's incredibly exciting. This case, where it's just a lot more transparent. It's like no fees, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And here, I mean, I can't speak for other countries, but it's basically very prohibitive, the laws, especially with regards to taxes, for even trying to use crypto, because every time you spend crypto on a coffee, you're selling Bitcoin and it's a taxable transaction, right? So here it's like, it's very, very different. So I see why Americans have this sort of stigma that you buy it as your savings account or a store of value, but it's not money. But you're seeing it in Latin America being used as a superior form of money, especially in a place like Venezuela. Like you said, the Bolivar is literally worth nothing. there's a cap on your earnings. You can't even take it out. You may have a bank account, but you can't take any out, right? I mean, it's like a few dollars a day or a month.
Exactly. Well,
who cares if you have a bank
account
that has useless money in it that you're not allowed to take out?
Well, you have a bank account that has a number whose number is worth nothing 5 days from today.
Yeah. So,
right? So it's crazy. It's but the way I see it a little bit, it's almost like when you have your ski boots on and it's clunky and you cannot really walk and it's hard to move, and suddenly you take them out and a world of possibilities properly unlocks. That's a little bit of what we're seeing for a lot of people that are getting into crypto. And going back to the unbanked, it's pretty interesting because it's not only because that banks haven't been doing a good job. I don't think they have, but they also don't want a lot of these customers. So a customer acquisition cost for a bank is quite high. Maintaining a customer in a bank, because of the way that they're built, is not necessarily profitable, certain amount of customers.
Right.
And when you have like most Mexicans that let's say they make under $800, $900 a month, then it's not a profitable customer for them. And then they don't want them. So not only crypto, there's a big boom on fintech because of this, because new mechanisms are allowing to create financial businesses that allow to serve these lower value customers.
Right. So it's not profitable for the bank to focus on those customers. And those customers, if you have $100 in the bank, you have to pay a $20 fee a month to have a bank account. It's like 20% of the money that you have
Correct.
Have to pay each month to have it. So it's just literally a system that doesn't work for people who are not wealthy. Right. Yes. So,
let's say you're in Brazil, you're in Argentina, you're in Mexico, and you're a super high net worth individual. Yeah, you have pretty good financial services.
That's fine, of course. Rich people always have good services wherever they are.
You have a guy that you call that can do things for you, right? But that's not a privilege. It's pretty interesting, Scott. The Mexican Stock Exchange has about 280,000 accounts. So this is people or businesses that have stocks or anything more anything a little bit more advanced than a retirement fund,
right?
And type of savings. And we have over 1 million customers with crypto. That's because if you want to get some stocks in the stock exchange, whether it's in Mexico or the US, the barrier of entry is pretty high. You need tens of thousands of pesos, and then they'll give you a shitty service, right? They'll be like,
Right. Yeah. And then you get the bottom of the barrel. So you have basically 4 times as many customers as the Mexican Stock Exchange, which you think would be like in the United States, that would be obviously the polar opposite. If you were comparing the two, that's really interesting.
There's 4 times more people with crypto than with any stocks.
That's amazing. So you said that you were in Canada when you started. You guys were really, really early, right? Like 2013 or something. So most of the exchanges that exist, I think, came about, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So, I mean, what made you decide at that time, 2013, when this was really a nascent asset? It was just the crazy techies, as they saw it, who were interested in it. What made you have the vision to build a business around crypto that early?
So it's pretty interesting. There's I discovered Bitcoin in 2011, right?
I wish I had.
Yeah. Well, I tried to buy at that time, and I sent money to Mt. Gox, and it got lost in limbo, basically in Swift limbo, as we call it. It returned to my bank account 2 months later. I didn't know where the money was.
At least you got it back.
Then I got the money. I kind of forgot. At least I got it back. Correct. Yeah. I lost a little bit of money in Mt. Gox, but not too much. And then I kind of forgot about buying. And I remember, it was just pretty interesting at the time to me. I went down the rabbit hole, as many of us do. And And I remember in 2012, the first time I used it, I sent money to a friend. I was in Vancouver to Montreal, Canada. And it was just mind blowing, right? Like, I have been like learning about it, but I had never used Bitcoin. And there's a quote that I really like that's any sufficiently advanced technology, it's indistinguishable from magic. And for me, it was magic. Like I was teletransporting value from a place to place without going through like
I hate to interrupt.
Any intermediaries. Yeah.
I hate to interrupt, but how scary is that first transaction? The first time that you send crypto and you put all those letters and numbers in, and then you hit send and it's not there right away, and you're like, "Is it gone? Did it come?" I will never. I mean, now it's very comfortable. I send money all over the place, but that first time I sent Bitcoin, I was so terrified.
It's horrible. It's terrifying, and it felt pretty cool to me because I'm comfortable with this, but it was pretty scary. I agree. There's very little money as well. I mean, this is 2012, right? Like it was more like people were just experimenting. It was not about how much it's a Bitcoin, like what's the value, what's the price of Bitcoin. It was more about, hey, you can move money, you can move value, and you can store value in your computer. I'm like, what? Right?
Yeah.
It was just
so cool.
And the UX for using crypto in 2012, it's nothing like today. so yeah, but it was very cool. I barely understood that first transaction, what was really happening. Right. But I started looking into it, and it was just I remember the very first time I was a kid that I used the internet. I had the luxury to be one of the first people in Mexico to use the internet.
Wow.
They were connecting it to a university, and I was there because my dad was giving classes at this university, and he took me there, and I would hang out with the guy that led their computer science department. And he was connecting the internet, literally.
Yeah.
Like the second internet in Mexico. And I used it. And even as a kid, I had a feeling of, this is weird. Like I can download these programs, these files, and it was clear to me that it was going to be relevant. Like as a kid, the only time I've had that feeling in my life was the first time I used crypto, like Bitcoin, that I sent it. So right away, right then, I was obsessed. Like this is going to change. Like the history of mankind will be different after this invention, right? And I want to be involved. So a friend of mine had also discovered Bitcoin. He was actually more into it. And we used to make short films together and things like that back in the day. And we would talk about Bitcoin all the time. And we started a cooperative in Vancouver called the Bitcoin Co-op. We made a point of sale. It was not a business, like a BitPay, let's say. Not a business. It was just to evangelize. And we had about 120 merchants in 2013 in Canada using Bitcoin. So we were just, it was awesome, Scott. We were just experimenting and evangelizing and going to coffee shop and saying hey, you accept Visa or MasterCard, you should accept Bitcoin, it's free, and et cetera, right?
So cool.
So right then, that's when I was saying, we were doing projects in Canada, and I would look back at Mexico and me having experience sending money abroad. So I was working down there, I went to school there. It was just not efficient. So I always thought the first time I used Bitcoin, you can transport money, whatever. It doesn't care about borders, this thing. Why can't you use it for remittances? Which is a massive, a source of income.
Huge market,
for many Mexican families. Huge market. It's the largest corridor used to Mexico. It's over $32 billion a year, I think.
Wow.
And it was that's what we set out to do, Ben and I, who's our CTO. And we wanted to first we said, okay, let's figure out how remittances could work in Mexico. And right away we noticed that we could not really do it if you didn't have a place where you could sell, buy, sell, store, and send this. Like a place that connected the traditional financial system with this new financial system, like this new digital economy.
It's one thing to be able to send Bitcoin, but if you can't get any, it's kind of a problem.
This is rich. Correct. We had to find a way to help people take the ski boots off, right?
Right.
First, for any remittances to work, and we started an exchange. Basically, it was the plumbing, the infrastructure. It was clear to us that the real use cases were going to happen in a place like Latin America. That was the best market for opportunity on this, in our opinion. I mean, there's some other great markets as well. I think there's going to be a pretty big explosion in India. That's my thesis.
Africa, I think.
Africa,
huge, yeah.
Huge. But Latin America, the numbers we're seeing, the growth, it's pretty interesting. And there's some speculation as well, like everywhere else. But we're seeing real use cases, like I mentioned, remittances, right? We started to do, we set out to do, okay, we're going to do remittances. You can move money, it's super cheap. It's going to be the best use case. And we were pretty naive because there was a lot of things we failed to understand. We failed to understand that, cost is important, but there was, removing friction was even more important. Things like safety, feeling safe that your funds arrive, super important. There's a pretty good study done to a bunch of migrants where they ask in the US, hey, sending remittances to Mexico, it's very expensive, very cheap, very cheap. They all go for very cheap. So for a lot of people, it's, wow, you're giving all this money to my family when they're charging them 7% of the transaction. When what you're really doing, it's debit and a credit, right? It's not, I mean, it's a little bit complex, but it's not rocket science. It shouldn't have these costs.
Right. It's the middleman.
Correct.
It's always the middleman.
The middleman. And they're why do you do, how do you use remittances? And turns out convenience and speed and convenience and safety are top, right?
Right.
So we've been working on enabling the remittance use case since 2014. Figuring it out, right? And it's interesting because only a year ago, it properly started to take off. And it's been growing really fast. We're doing about 5% of the remittance volume from the US to Mexico. And moving the US dollars to Mexican pesos, that's moving to crypto, right? Today. Through with Ripple and with Bitcoin, that's how we're doing it, and it's more of a service.
Not primarily with stable coins; it's primarily with XRP and Bitcoin.
XRP and Bitcoin today.
XRP is so fast, so
it's pretty fast, and I mean it's a pretty good. I mean, it's a pretty good coin for fast and cheap payments today, for that use case. Right. The cross-border use case, it's pretty good. But at the end of the day, it's also about liquidity, right? We had to develop the liquidity. We had to, okay, you have $1 million that you need to move to Mexican pesos. Can you sell them at a good price, right? So that's taken a while as well. So it's been moving all sides. But it's crazy. There's people at the rural areas of a state like Oaxaca, which is very rural, that they go to the store, they get their cash that their son in Sacramento, California sends them, and they don't know they're using Bitcoin or how it works or what are the economics of it, how is it, what's the cryptography. They just know they got more money, that the transaction was more transparent, that it was more safe because the fees are lower. So they were able to withdraw smaller amount of money, like to send a smaller amount of money more frequently. Like a lot of these people go to the store and they carry out like massive amounts of cash, right?
Yeah, huge stacks, right? Of course.
So they're terrified. Like, when I said 6 out of 10 Mexicans don't have bank accounts.
Right. So how do
under the mattress?
Right. So the question is though, like, okay, so I'm in the United States. I send Bitcoin or XRP. It arrives at the convenience store and they transfer it to cash. And the person who gets the cash, like you said, is not the wiser of the way that it happened. So how do we get to the point where they don't take it out in cash and they just keep the XRP or they keep the Bitcoin or they convert it to a stable coin and they just transact that way and they never carry the cash out in the store? Because that's when we hit, right? That's when it explodes.
I mean, it's interesting, Scott, because we see a little bit of that happening with the younger generations.
Right.
So a lot of the people that are sending remittances, like let's say they've been sending remittances for 50 years. So they go to the store and they're like, oh, you're sending money to your daughter. She's going to third grade, right? Like she needs
clothes or books or whatever, right? Of course.
And they like that, right? They like that way of that relationship. So changing those habits, it's a little difficult. I think it's doable,
sure.
Possible. But what's interesting is that there's younger generations sending cash that tend to do a lot of the education and like evangelizing of like, no, like keep it there and then you can like spend it from your Bitso account. And
right. And can they spend it in that convenience store? Like that convenience store will give them their cash, but will that convenience store also accept crypto back for goods?
Not yet.
Right. So that's the other, like they'll keep it in cash if they could go buy their milk right there with the crypto, right?
I mean, there's some convenience stores where you can spend with crypto like everywhere in the world, but still very niche. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is we saw the payments use case like grow a lot in 2016, 2017. Like it was exploding. Suddenly we were getting a ton of new users that were buying about $30 worth of Bitcoin and withdrawing it to the same place. We're like, what's happening? And turns out that an influencer made a video of how you go to the convenience store and pay for your games using Bitso. So they follow the tutorial of converting to Bitcoin, sending the Bitcoin to Steam, and using it to spend. And it was like every month that was growing. And it was totally organic, and our experience, like user experience, wasn't really built for that. Like we just didn't know.
But people find a way.
People find a way. Well, they find a way because they don't have any other alternatives, right?
So, yeah.
And
necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Correct. I mean, this is people. They wanna buy their game, and they have no ways to buy their game to play with their friends or like whatever it is, right? But that use case kind of collapsed with the whole scaling Bitcoin problems that we had in 2016, 2017.
Right.
And it was then very expensive to transact in Bitcoin. Yeah. And we suffered it. Like my soul got like that we're trying to make crypto useful. It was just dying a little bit when I saw.
Right, because cheap transactions or free transactions was kind of your pitch, especially for people who want to keep as much of the money as possible. So,
correct.
Is that where is that where Ripple and stable coins and such came in? I mean, or was it just that Bitcoin crashed and became cheap again to send?
No, I mean, no. I think SegWit helped a lot. We kind of forget, but it
improve the network. Yeah,
improve the network, and there's been more improvements. We will be living Lightning network that it will get a lot more easier, more adaptable. But and I do believe there's going to be a resurgence of that merchant use case.
Yeah, I think so too.
Hopefully. So one of the things we did is we had a peer-to-peer payment system where you can transact Bitcoin and other cryptos and stable coins very easily with a phone number or an email. So it's almost like a Venmo where you can move your pesos, your dollars, your crypto very easily with QR codes for merchants or for peer-to-peer. And we've seen a lot of adoption on that just for the cheap payments, even though we haven't fully focused on that. It's just very interesting to see that grow and grow and grow. But it's not necessarily a blockchain transaction, right? Which is the one that carries the fee. And that's the goal that we're trying to
Got it. Sick of paying ridiculous fees to trade crypto? It's time you try Voyager. It's hands down my favorite place to buy and trade crypto, and it's 100% commission free. Voyager gives you easy access to more than 40 top crypto assets, and you can instantly transfer cash from your bank account so you never miss a trading opportunity. Even better, you can now automatically earn interest on your crypto holdings. Currently, they are offering 6.5% interest on Bitcoin and 9.5% on USDC. Yes, you heard that correctly, 9.5% interest. And there are no limits or lockups, so your funds always stay liquid. Find out why so many people are making the switch to Voyager. Visit investvoyager.com or search for Voyager in the iTunes or Google Play Store and get $25 in free Bitcoin when you use the promo code SCOTT25. That's SCOTT25. If you gamble with Bitcoin, you need a sportsbook that doesn't just slap the word crypto on their homepage and call it a day. That's why you need MyBookie. They're the only sportsbook capable of taking your Bitcoin obsession and turning it into huge cash prizes. Do you want a 100% bonus on your first 3 deposits? No deposit fees, huge deposit limits, and withdrawals processed within 24 hours? MyBookie's got you covered. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Do you want to know what's really going to piss off all those people who told you to stop talking about Bitcoin 10 years ago? MyBookie's crypto rewards program. Receive cash back, free bets, huge bonuses, and exclusive promotions simply for using crypto. One deposit makes you a crypto rewards member for life. That means cash back, exclusive offers, and more forever. But we're still not done. MyBookie knows that your love of crypto is matched only by your hatred of credit card fees. So they decide to issue back those credit card fees in the form of crypto rewards. And they're doubling it. So if you incur $10 in credit card fees, MyBookie will offer you a crypto reward of $20. Deposit with Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, or Litecoin with ease, and withdraw with Bitcoin just as simply. Put your crypto where your mouth is and sign up at MyBookie. And when you do, use promo code SCOTT to receive a 100% bonus on your first 3 deposits. Bet with the best, bet with MyBookie. So you worked on remittances for 7 years before it really exploded and became a core part of your successful business. So what else is Bitso now? And then I know you touched on that you're building some cross-border payment solutions that I know you're excited about. So what are your core businesses at this moment? You have the payments, obviously, you have the exchange, and then what are you building?
So we basically have our Bitso app, and that's basically like a global bank account. I mean, I know that's about the proposition of a lot of crypto.
Short the banks. No.
No.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
The big proposal is local access to a global value proposition, right?
Right.
When I say that you're someone from Brazil and you go to a bank like Itaú or one of the big banks, and they're like, you're not trustworthy enough, I'm going to give you your credit at 200% a year because you have a good income, right? And that's a fair type of transaction.
Insane.
That's ridiculous, right? And the problem is that money, like when you look at the financial systems, they're siloed. They're jurisdiction, they're locally based. And that's incorrect when we live in a global economy, right? Sure. Why am I on a disadvantage to be successful in life if I was born in Sao Paulo than if I was born in Stockholm, right? If I was born in Stockholm, life is a lot easier for me. And one of the reasons it's bringing the access to people to these global financial services where they can get the same level of opportunities as if you were born in Scandinavia, right?
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do. It's basically like a global challenger bank, crypto powered. We give access to stable coins and crypto to people and all of its use cases. We're seeing pretty interesting things in Argentina, for example. So in Argentina, 75, the people are used to protecting against the Argentinian peso. This is from years ago. I mean, there's people our age maybe, or I don't know how old are you, but my age.
I'm 44. I'm 44.
Okay. That's in the 3 devaluations. Like their money go to zero during their lifestyle. Like that's crazy, right? So you're just used to, like, whenever I go to Argentina, I love talking to people because they tell you like how they use their money. It's fascinating, right? And they always use the same word that it's survival, right? And like, oh, I do this to survive, and it's fun. And I'm like, that's weird, right? That you have to, but they've gotten into this weird world already. Yeah. So basically 75% of the bank accounts in the country empty the day they receive the payroll. So Argentines get their payroll, they make any payments they need to do, like, right? Then they empty whatever they have on their bank accounts. Then they go to a cueva, which is this like
exchange. Yeah, the exchanges in the streets. Yeah, of course.
Like, or they have like a US dollar dealer, or everyone has one.
Yeah, a guy.
A guy. They have a guy. It has a name, and they call them up, and they're like, "Oh, I need to buy dollars," so they convert the Argentine pesos to dollars.
Which you can't do directly. You have to have a guy or do it sort of under the table, because there's extreme limits and the exchange rate is far worse if you do it directly through a bank or something.
Well, you can do it directly up to $200 a month.
Yeah, $200 with a worse exchange rate. Yeah.
Correct. Whether you're an individual or a business.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, they just don't want you coming out of the currency, right?
So there's many dollar, like, well, no, the actually exchange rate is good because it's a tipo de cambio oficial, so the official exchange rate. And that's
all right. They changed that a few years ago, though, right? Because I know that there was a time a couple of years ago, I have American friends who are living in Argentina, and they would like go find their guy, and the exchange rate would be like, one thing at the bank officially, but if they went in the street, it would be like 2 or 3 times better, But yeah, that's right. I forgot that they actually regulated that now, right?
We could do an entire podcast, Scott, on Argentine USD exchange rates.
Yeah, I'm sure.
There's a Bitcoin exchange rate now that people know what it is. There's a thing called contado con liqui. There's the thing called the dollar blue. There's the official one, which is not real. There's a cheese exchange rate, because like cheese exporters, something. So Argentines know these things. So they're like very financially sophisticated, right? Like that's a very like a big difference from our users, let's say in Mexico. And so what they do is they empty the accounts, they pay everything in pesos they can, they convert everything to dollars, and the craziest part is that they have their US dollar cash and they go to the bank to deposit in a safety deposit box.
So they go back to the same bank that they withdrew their money from to find a safe place to put stacks of cash.
Correct. So there's a crisis of running out of safety deposit boxes in the country. They're super popular.
Wow. I lived in Miami for like 4 years, probably from like 2012 to 2016. And the amount of Argentinian money that was flowing in to buy real estate and just get their money out of the country and into dollars or into some, asset in the United States it was absolutely incredible.
Right.
From South America in general, but particularly from Argentina.
Correct. So one of the interesting bits is that now they have most of the growth we're seeing right now in Argentina, like the big growth. And we're seeing growth in other markets, but the one that's really surprising us, it's in Argentina, because now they download their Bitso app, they get their money, they move it to their Bitso account very easily, and then they just convert it to dollars, to DAI, for example. Our DAI market in Argentina, it's super popular. And then when they need to spend it, they just convert it back whenever they want. So we have plans, for example, to launch a card in Argentina where they just spend and the money converts to Argentine pesos.
Right. So you're holding it in crypto, you swipe your card, you don't know, nobody knows it's a normal credit card transaction or debit card transaction. And you don't have to actually cash out of your crypto to transact.
Exactly. So yeah, you're saving US dollars, which interestingly enough, like it's not great to save in US dollars this year.
Some places it is. It's all relative, right? I mean, you'd rather be in Bitcoin than US dollars, but you'd certainly rather be in US dollars than Argentinian pesos. So,
yes.
So a US dollar is still a store of value to most of the world.
Well, you're even probably better off like to be in US dollars than Mexican pesos or Brazilian reais, which are stronger currencies for Latin America. But they devaluate historically. I remember my sister had a pretty strange sickness when she was a kid, and they couldn't find like a cure for her, right? Like it was like, what is it? So my parents had to take her to the Boston Children's Hospital. There was a specialist on this, and they took her in, and it was a time where the Mexican peso just devaluated like crazy. So as they went to the US to treat my sister, they placed a bunch of locks in the financial system. And the money that my parents had, they couldn't pay the hospital, basically. So my sister was in the hospital almost dying because they could not pay the hospital because the Mexican peso had devaluated. And you could only spend something like for like $20 or ridiculous amounts, right? So, fortunately, the doctor ended up paying the bill. It's just crazy. And then my parents figured out a way to pay the doctor, right? But I didn't know that story. And then my mother told that to me recently. So I was very young. It's just crazy, right? Like we forget. Like, the Mexican peso only devaluated at 10% this year. So okay. No, it's your money. It's your like your inflation and your devaluation. It's hitting you on like it goes back to the luck of where you were born, right?
Of course.
Why was I unlucky to be born in a country that I have not an ideal currency for me to store my money? So in Argentina, the store of value use case, it's pretty big.
So the people obviously see the store of value use case. In the United States, we have now companies like MicroStrategy, right? Michael Saylor saying, hey, we're going to put our treasury into Bitcoin because it's not going to devalue as quickly as the dollar, which is an obvious move, but the dollar is still pretty strong relative to these other ones. So that said, the people see it. American companies are seeing it even relative to the dollar. Do you think that Latin American governments and companies will, well, maybe they already do, or will invest in Bitcoin as a store of value to sort of fight that inevitable inflation?
I think I think all central banks will eventually have some Bitcoin.
Right.
That's just my 2 cents.
I mean, they used to have gold, right? And this is a better version. So
correct. And they still have some gold, that they use sometimes to sell a bunch of gold for to like protect the currency, right? But we're seeing companies, come like a lot of treasuries coming in and using us to
so you are seeing that. You're directly seeing that.
We're seeing that in Latin America, yes, in a few different places. And these are treasuries for companies that are not like for example, we've been seeing like family offices or funds that come in and buy some.
Right.
But this is now like treasuries from companies that have nothing to do with financial services or crypto or they're just protecting.
They just want to protect their cash. I mean, it's. It seems so inevitable that they're all going to have to. Like, not that they're going to choose to. Eventually, they're just going to have to because there's nowhere else to put your money.
No, and Scott, to my knowledge, I don't know if any governments are. Maybe they are, but I don't think so. I don't know. To my knowledge, they're not yet.
We don't count the Petro, right?
We do not count the Petro. No.
Well, what a failed experiment that was. I actually had Gabriel Jimenez early on when I started the podcast, who was the crypto guy kind of behind the Petro. I had him on the podcast. So it was a really incredible story. Did not go the way that he foresaw, obviously. So
I was invited to the announcement of the Petro. This is a quick story.
Well, they put him on stage. They took him out of jail and put him on stage to pretend that he was supporting it to sign the documents. Apparently, that's the story. Wow. It's pretty crazy.
No, I got a letter. It was around Christmas time. You're invited by the government of Venezuela, by La República, the Venezuela Republic, blah, blah, for an initiative around blockchain and stuff, right? We're inviting the leading companies. And it was December 22nd, right?
Yeah.
And I remember reading that and showing that to the team and being like, no, there's just no way, right? When you get in there and they're they sit you with Maduro and they're like, you need to support this. In Venezuela for Christmas.
Yeah, this is scary. So, so how much, speaking of governments, obviously the very core of the idea of fiat currency is that it's backed by trust, right? We used to have money that was backed by gold, or now we have money that's backed by trusting your government. So how much of this adoption that you're seeing do you think is a result of distrust of governments in Latin America?
Yeah, so it's very simple to place Latin America under the same bucket, but they're all very different countries, right? So you have Brazil, where there's 5 banks that basically dictate fees and things like that. So people are pretty sensitive about this because they say, okay, yeah, we're going to charge this for access to capital, and there's nothing that people can do, right?
Right.
And then, that happens with oligopolies. Then you have a place like Argentina, for example, where they had this thing called the corralito. And that's pretty interesting because basically they couldn't access the money in their bank account for a very long time in 2001. And it created this psychological, it's ingrained, it's in their brains, but on a very deep level, right, where they don't want to minimize how money in their bank accounts, right? Probably that's why they use these safety deposit boxes that I was telling you. They prefer to keep the cash because they can withdraw that, and they don't want to have a corralito where they don't have access to their money, basically. So yeah, I think there's a distrust more on the banks. I don't know about the governments. For example, the Central Bank of Mexico, it's actually a pretty efficient institution for Mexico. So they do things. They've done things pretty well. Protecting us against the 2008 crisis and things like that. But at the end of the day, I do believe there's a general mistrust on the banking system and some on the governments. This is a trend we're seeing worldwide, I guess, right? This apathy towards governments.
Yeah, and politics in general, yeah.
Politics, but it's a little bit more present in some of the countries where we're operating, just because in a way they've been worse to people, right?
Of course. Yeah. What's interesting though is now some of those things that you've seen in countries, in the less developed countries around the world, the monetary policy, central bank policy, the printing and the hyperinflation. I wonder what it's like for people there now to see it happening everywhere. Not that the United States hasn't been printing money for a while, but we've taken it parabolic here, right? So to see it in places like this, when it seemed like something that was just for smaller countries or other governments, now it's the dollar, right?
Yeah, people think their currency is untouchable, but they're not. They're pretty fragile.
Right. And that goes back to your trust of your government to maintain your currency. And to me, isn't that such a clear case for Bitcoin?
It's a very clear case for Bitcoin. It is. It is. It's interesting because there's still a lot of friction with Bitcoin. I don't think we're there as an industry to reduce some of that friction, right? And when you think about who's using Bitcoin today, we've seen crazy adoption in the past couple of years. Still scary, right? It will stop being scary. One of the things we strongly believe in is that cryptocurrency mass adoption is not necessarily a technological challenge. I think the technology works really well. It's improving constantly, but it's more of a design challenge of making the capabilities of what this technology can do closer to the needs of people and making it easier for them to use. It's like when you send out WhatsApp today, or something like that, you don't care
you don't care about the
TCP/IP
technology
or if they encrypt or not. Some people do care how Facebook would encrypt things, obviously, but people what they really care is, did my message go out? Did they receive it? Did they read it? Are they replying back? Right? They want to communicate, and I think that's something that we need to do as an industry. People need to send a payment. They need to move money. They need to store money. They need to feel safe. These are the things we need to convey to people in a very simple way.
So does that happen with Bitcoin, or are there altcoins that are better for some of these purposes, or is it really all about Bitcoin?
It does happen with Bitcoin because of just the way it's set up, and it really bothers me. It's pretty silly, but humans can only really understand 2 decimal places.
Sure.
Properly. You can only quantify a cent, right? Relative. So when someone's transacting with 0.000164,
sats are very complicated. Yes,
it's very difficult, and sats are complicated, and I think that's we see a lot of users coming in and accessing something else just because it's cheaper, right?
Yeah, well, that was in 2017. They put Litecoin on Coinbase. People were well, I can't afford a whole Bitcoin. They didn't understand, so they just bought the cheapest thing they could find on Coinbase.
Correct. But it's so there's a lot of education that needs to happen about these type of things, and even better for me would be to just. It's a little bit difficult now, but to agree as an industry on changing to sats, for example, right? And but it's pretty tough to come into agreement.
It becomes harder as it gets more expensive too, because
correct. So there's these little problems like that, and that we still need to address as an industry. There's things that are much better and easier, we talked about the first transaction and how it just becomes second nature. Once you move, once you used it, then
never go back. Yeah.
Never go back, second nature, etc., etc. So it's how can we get people over the hump? Because the first one's scary, but the second one, you realize it's actually a lot easier, right? It's than sending an ACA, an ACH in the US, and putting your address.
The worst.
Right? That's the worst. So, So that's what we're working on. But I think there's still a long ways to go. It's getting better, but it's not there yet.
Right. So, so it's clear Bitcoin is going to be the best store of value. I just wonder if another project that we haven't thought of or will emerge and just kind of blow it out of the water with some of the peer-to-peer aspects or the actual, sending money in. So maybe it doesn't have to be everything.
No, and we're talking about XRP, like it's very useful for the cross-border use case,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm personally a Bitcoin guy, but it's actually like very, very useful to move between exchanges to, it works. And a lot of the development roadmap has been geared towards that, right?
That's what it
Where
is.
Bitcoins has been more around security, around like it always works. It's awesome, right? But it just has had a different product roadmap, I guess.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what it is and what the narrative is in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years and 20 years. What do you think your business looks like in 10 years?
We don't exist the way we operate today. So what I always tell the team is that, right now we're a centralized exchange.
Yeah, of course.
We interact with traditional financial systems. We're regulated. We're regulated in Europe. We're regulated in Mexico. Getting a PSP license in Argentina. There's a clear regulatory strategy now in Brazil. So we interact with both worlds, right? So we're custodians. We keep funds of people very safely. And but at the end of the day, I don't think that's going to be the case for most of these exchanges, right? We're going to move into more of a interface layer, I think, for the users. So, hopefully, once we're into crypto, there's no need to connect the traditional financial system because we've all upgraded.
So your employees aren't gonna have jobs.
No, they will. It would just be different, right? It would just be like what I say is, if we're successful, we're going to become necessary,
right?
The way we exist today, and we just need to evolve. We need to solve the needs, like work on solving the needs of people and making crypto useful. And if they find a use for it, then we'll have, like, if we provide value to people, then they'll be able to, like, they'll use us. If we, like right now, the biggest value we provide is to give them access to the system. But once everybody has access, then we'll provide a different value, right? Like we're providing other values, like making a lot of these things easier to use. Like, for example, getting interest on your crypto. Like we're working on making that very, very easy to use. Like whether it's on US dollars or Bitcoin. The payments use case, we've been focusing a lot on making it easy for people like in Latin America that you use us to make payments. And interestingly enough, Scott, we worked on sending bank transactions really well in Mexico. We started in Mexico, and suddenly we have the best UX to send bank transfers. So a lot of people used us to pay rent, like bank transfer and things like that, right? And we believe on you having choice over which currencies where you want to store or where you want to spend or what you want to receive. So we're still working on that user experience, and that's the type of value we want to provide to customers.
It's so interesting. So like now you're, working on adoption and you're working on connecting people basically to the systems that exist because they still need those systems. So the real goal in 10 years is those systems completely disappear and we just operate inside this ecosystem and therefore the business completely changes.
Correct.
So cool. Let's hope.
Well, and the other part that's interesting, it's we speak a lot about the retail use case, but like another thought we have is that the entire FX market will move into crypto.
Yeah, sure.
Like, and there's currencies like...
which is the biggest traded market. Like that's the highest volume market there is. People don't realize that, but trading Forex is, the volume is incredible. Yeah.
And you have a currency like the Mexican peso, which is a highly, highly traded currency, right? So it's pretty interesting, like how the technology that these crypto exchanges are building, it's now better than some of the Forex markets.
Sure.
and you can move the funds real time. So that's pretty interesting as well. What's happening with, and I do believe that Forex will eventually be consumed by crypto.
I agree. So where can everybody find you after this? Follow you, sign up for Bitso, follow your progress.
So you can download our app in the iOS store on Google Play. Unfortunately, we cannot service U.S. citizens.
Nobody can. Especially
unless
if you're in New
a
York.
Regulated financial institution, but
nobody can service us in crypto. Come on, man.
But if you're not from the US, you can probably serve you. And Bitso.com, we also produce a lot of educational content that we have a platform called Bitso Edu. And even if you're from the US, you can access that. But you can follow us on Twitter at Bitso, or me personally at Pablo_Gonzalez. It's on my name here. So, well, in the call, you don't see it, but Pablo_Gonzalez or at Bitso.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know you're a busy man working on taking over the world with Bitcoin and crypto. And I think it's so important that people understand that this is more than just, a speculative asset or a savings account or even just a store of value that's being used every single day. And it's really changing people's lives.
No, I appreciate the invite. And I will watch that episode from the Petro. Sounds fascinating.
That one actually was before we even did video, so you're gonna have to actually listen to it. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. Crazy story. Gabriel Jimenez. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you so much.
That's dope.